Barbie is a 3D toy, a doll, made of plastic and mass-produced internationally. Her original target demographic was preteen girls, however that has moved to ages 3 to 7. The goal of this visual communication design specimen was to inspire young girls of their limitless potential through the power of play and imagination, and a lot of pink accessories. In this presentation I will be covering the history of Barbie, her design, the public reaction, the controversy about Barbie's body, her redesign, and then most importantly, what and how Barbie communicates that qualifies her as a very good specimen of visual communication design. To understand the history of this doll, we need to look at what the cultural landscape was like for girls and dolls in the USA in the 1950s. All the dolls sold were baby dolls that were a training tool for young girls to grow up to become mommies, because at this time, this is what girls were expected to do: be married and have babies. Enter Ruth, handler. Ruth was the co-founder of Mattel Toys with her husband, but she was also a mother of a preteen daughter, Barbara. She saw her daughter playing paper dolls. Paper dolls are a 2D toy that is usually an icon of a female person in her underwear along with various outfits. Young girls were expected to cut out the figures and outfits and play dress up. Paper dolls were a common standard in women's home and fashion magazines. Ruth realized the potential of creating a 3D version of a paper doll, but the leaders in Mattel didn't really support her vision. They couldn't understand it, because they were all middle-aged men. On a trip to Germany, Ruth came across a Lily doll. The Lily doll was a novelty for men. She was about 13 inches and sold at liquor stores and tobacco shops. Lily was originally a German cartoon as a post-war sex kitten. She used men, got what she wanted and did it all while looking glamorous. Ruth brought the doll back to Mattel to show the men, and after seeing Lily, they approved it for development. The first Barbie was an 11-inch high-fashion doll. In terms of design principles, first, proportion. Her proportion is way off from a real female body with extended legs and torso. This was not out of the ordinary for fashion illustration, which was popular at the time. Fashion illustration elongates the body to show off the garments. Most people are about 7.5 heads high, but fashion illustration is about 9 heads high, and the body is thin with slim waist, hips and bust. Barbie, on the other hand, emphasizes curves, especially in the bust. Galia Slayan, a Hamilton College student who once battled an eating disorder, tried to make an actual life-size Barbie. She was shocked at the result. Barbie would be a freakishly shaped woman with pencil-thin legs, breasts that threatened to topple her over, and a body mass index that would put her squarely in the anorexia camp. If Barbie were an actual woman, she would be 5 feet 9 inches tall, have a 39 inches bust, an 18 inches waist, 33 inches hips and a size 3 shoe. In terms of color, Barbie's porcelain white complexion also plays into her design, but we'll come back to that. But know that Barbie wasn't always just a blonde originally. She was also a brunette and a redhead. As she was based on a paper doll, her ability to change clothes was important. Her clothes would be a big part of the Barbie business model because those would be all the accessories that are sold. Due to their size, Barbie's clothes couldn't follow the same standards as regular clothes, because thicker fabric doesn't construct the same way on small clothes. So the body of Barbie had to have specific articulation and proportions to make her clothes stay on. And because Barbie's job was to be a teen fashion model, her job was literally to look good in clothes, and to stay thin enough to fit in them. Remember, this is the 1950s. Women in media were portrayed as subservient to men. Look good for your man and stay thin. In fact, one of the first Barbie accessories sets was called Slumber Party Barbie. She came with a bathroom scale which was stopped at 110 pounds, and a diet book. Original reaction. Barbie was an instant success with mothers and daughters. This was a new way to play. Little girls could project themselves on the doll instead of taking care of them. So this was a step in a new direction. As times changed, Barbie had to change. Her career choices were expanded, but only to ladies' jobs like nursing, being a stewardess, or teaching. Barbie wasn't liberated yet. Most significantly, in 1971, her look and makeup evolved. But in 1971, a big change happened with Barbie, Malibu Barbie. This was when Barbie became the classic California blonde. She reflected youth. The big change, however, came with her face. Her eyes were made bigger and looked straight out and not in a demure side eye. Makeup was not as severe as it had been. Culturally, the 70s provided a big change in women's liberation. Women were questioning their role in society and calling out oppressors. This included Mattel and Barbie, and so Mattel let Barbie change with the time. Her job was now Olympic athlete. astronaut, fashion magazine editor. However, she still wore heels and a short skirt into the operating room as a surgeon. But that wasn't enough of a change for feminists. Women started to say Barbie's message was an unobtainable body image and the standard of beauty was Eurocentric. In response, in 1969 the first black Barbie doll, Christie, was introduced by Mattel. To be clear, she was not Barbie, she was Barbie's friend. In other words, Barbie is the star of the show and Christie is a sidekick. Malibu Barbie in 1971 was joined with Malibu Christie in 1973 and was how she remained for 7 years. In 1980 Mattel introduced Barbie in different colors, and she was designated as African American Barbie and Hispanic Barbie. It's important to recognize that she was not a friend of Barbie, but Barbie herself. So now Barbie was no longer an icon of a specific girl but rather she was a symbol for all young womanhood. These Barbies were a step in the right direction, however the dolls were critiqued for simply using the same molds and only changing the color of the plastic. Ethnic features were not taken into consideration. The beauty standard was still in Barbie's proportions and looks based on Caucasian standards. And Mattel was criticized for creating stereotypical outfits for these dolls. Still, women were striving to fit the Barbie standard of beauty. Some women tried obtaining Barbie proportions through extreme plastic surgery. This is just one several women who alter their bodies. This is popular in the Ukraine and other Eastern Bloc countries where Barbie is the standard of American beauty and American power. Barbie, of course, was blamed for this body modification obsession. It raised the question, what exactly was the message being presented in this toy doll? Was it reaching young girls and inspire the limitless potential? By the 1990s, Barbie faced other controversies. 1. Mattel created a wheelchair Barbie named Becky, a handy-capable school photographer. However, Barbie's dream house was not ADA accessible. The wheelchair didn't fit through the doors. 2. Mattel teamed with Nabisco to create Ritz Cracker Barbie and Oreo Fun Barbie. This seemed like a good idea to join the American cookie with America's doll. It wasn't until after production that it was pointed out that Oreo is a derogatory term for some African Americans. 3. The Barbie that received the most backlash was 1992 with Teen Talk Barbie, who said things like "let's go shopping" and "math is hard." Feminists regarded these as limiting the agency for young girls. It did not give them any aspirations further than consumerism or reinforcing the negative stereotype that women are not good at math. Despite controversy, Barbie's popularity was still high, with the highest-selling version, Totally Hair Barbie, in the late 90s. But in the early 2000s, Barbie sales began to drop. Barbie faced competition from Bratz and various other fashion dolls. Bratz were even more out of proportion, but comically so. But Bratz dolls appeared to be more diverse, although the mold of the body and head were the same for each doll. The proportion of eyes and lips made them appear more ethnic and thus relatable to a larger audience. Mattel knew they had to make some radical changes. Enter Lamely. In 2014, artist Nicolay Lamb, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, recreated the iconic Barbie doll using proportions of the average 19-year-old woman. According to the CDC, "I wanted to see if an average-size Barbie had market potential," Lamb, 24, told the Daily News in an email. Lamely was a success. She was crowdsource funded and released. Her neck is nearly twice as wide, her legs shorter and her head a tiny bit smaller. Parents liked that Lamely had a more positive body image, with healthy proportions. However, some children preferred Barbie because she is more extravagant. Still, Mattel noticed this and opted to make changes to Barbie. It should also be noted in 2014 Elsa from Frozen became the #1 selling doll, and Lego became the #1 toy manufacturer, toppling Mattel. Some reports say this is due to their expansion to include girls' interests. In a 2014 survey of young girls, the demographic for the doll, the results showed Barbie was out of touch. Barbie was not reflective of what was happening in the world, and parents were now becoming very aware of what images signified to their child, and they didn't like the message. Mattel knew something drastic had to be done. The Mattel designers were told in a design brief, how would you change Barbie if you were starting from scratch? It was decided that Barbie should come in a variety of skin tone colors and in 4 different body types, not just one. The body styles were original, petite, curvy and tall. The engineering of these dolls were similar to the original Barbie. Make sure they are articulated so they can wear different clothes, but also to make sure they can bend and sit without spread. And when they stand, they do not have a thigh gap. They also couldn't share clothes, but that's a more realistic view of the world. These new Barbies changed the game. This became a major social issue and a news feature. putting Barbie on the cover of Time magazine, and so far, they are a success, both socially and financially. Barbie has stood the test of time. She has been part of popular culture for over 50 years. She has been commemorated in a U.S. postage stamp, and she is part of our cultural visual vernacular. Barbie became an inspiration as one of Andy Warhol's American Icons series. Contemporary designers have used her in parodying famous designs and illustrations, such as the Bob Dylan poster by Milton Glasser and Man Ray's La Violante Angra. Semiotically, Barbie is a symbol of female power, female independence, and having it all, or she is a symbol of vapid materialism. However, ultimately she is still an icon of a young woman, despite the awkward proportions, and of a career girl. What she indicates as an index varies from designer to audience, but that has to do with changing times and points of view, as I had shown throughout history. She could indicate anorexia or a dream lifestyle. The message of Barbie will always be contentious. If her designers say Barbie's message to little girls is you can be anything, there will be critics who will hear, you're a failure if you're not like me. Still, Barbie's design, her art, her craft, and her message has evolved. And maybe that is her message, that you must change with the times.